all of your mics are muted. So at the end, I'll go ahead and open it up for questions, and then we'll unmute your mics. Just let us know in the chat box that you have one, and we'll unmute you one at a time. But a little bit about myself. My name is Katie Lopez, and I'm an Army wife, and we are currently stationed at Fort Campbell. I'm also the Military Spouse Advocacy Network Career and Employment Coordinator and the co-lead for the In-Gear Career Chapter here at Fort Campbell. So first we're going to talk about what networking is. In its most basic form, networking can be defined as interacting with other people to exchange information and develop contacts, especially to further one's career. Thinking about developing your professional network can sound intimidating, but in reality, you already have a network established. Anyone that you converse with regularly, such as your friends, family members, classmates, and coworkers, are already included in your network. These are the people that know you, and they know what your goals are. Adding new people to your network doesn't have to be a formal process. Conferences and networking events are not the only environment to create these relationships. Now, I do suggest getting involved in professional associations, attending networking events and conferences in your area of specialty. But you can also meet people in your everyday routine. Striking up a conversation with the person next to you while you wait for coffee could land you a new contact. Now, networking, though, is not about instant gratification. You want to make sure that you're meeting the right people who can connect you to resources, but that doesn't mean that you're the only person that's benefiting from this professional relationship. The first thing that you have to remember with networking is that it's not about just you. You don't want to strike up a conversation with someone and immediately launch into everything you expect to get out of that relationship. Referrals take time. Networking is about building professional relationships with people. So while you do want to make sure that you're properly introducing yourself, you don't want to spend the entire conversation concentrating on your accomplishments, what you're looking for, and what this person can do for you. Make sure you let them speak and listen to what they have to say. It's a give and take process where you're mutually going to benefit from having each other in your network. Now, having a professional network is essential to military spouses. It doesn't matter what point in your life that you're in right now. You could be trying to maintain a career, you could be about to transition back into the civilian sector, or you might not even be ready to enter into the workforce altogether. Regardless of where you're at in this moment, it's important to have these contacts established so that you can make that transition easier. And let's face it, military families, we move, and we move a lot. Just when you think that you've gained your bearings in one location, you can be sent across the country or even the world. By building your professional network, you're more likely to already have connections or know someone who might in the area that you're moving to. We already do this in informal ways. I mean, take a second to think about all the people that you currently know, whether they're civilian or military, who live in different places than you. Chances are you have quite a few contacts across the U.S. Now imagine if you were to expand that by adding in more contacts. Before you know it, you're going to increase the size of your network tenfold. This can make the transition process easier when you're faced with a move. Whether you have recently moved to a new area or networking will help you obtain those new contacts once you arrive. I would suggest seeking out some professional organizations, networking groups, even nonprofits and military families that you already know in that area. One great resource that you can use is In-Gear Career, and it's a national nonprofit that provides professional development and networking for career-minded military spouses. You're going to feel more comfortable knowing that there's an established network at the installation that you can utilize to make new contacts in the area. A few places I would suggest starting with for networking events would be your local Chamber of Commerce. See when they are hosting their next event and attend. Many chambers have something called Business After Hours, and you don't even have to be a business member to be attending that meeting. You can go just as someone that's looking to network. Join a local chapter of a professional association in your area. This is a great place to meet like-minded professionals who work in your specialty, and they're also going to be an excellent source of community knowledge. Volunteering with a local organization or nonprofit in the civilian community. A lot of times we don't think about venturing outside of our installation, but if you go into the civilian community, a lot of business leaders will partner with these organizations and they'll actually attend the events and the fundraisers. It's the perfect place to meet the key leaders without having the pressure of a formal networking event. Another great way is to become involved in your installation. Make your presence known at the Employment Readiness Center and develop professional relationships with those that work there. The more you interact with them and sustain the relationship, the more likely they are to personally alert you of a specific job opening before they actually market it. Usually, they will also know a specific point of contact for you to get in touch with instead of letting your electronic application get lost in cyberspace. Remember that a good majority of those that are employed at the installation have probably been there for a while, and they already have established networks with both civilian and community leaders. These are some of the best people to get to know. It can be really intimidating when someone asks you to tell them about yourself. I personally struggle with this. I'm always afraid that I'm going to sound narcissistic. But the truth is, these contacts can't help you if they don't know who you are and what you want. You just have to remember to balance the conversation. It's fine to talk about what you want, what you've done, and where you want to go, but just make sure that you keep it short and simple. You really only have about 15 seconds to grab someone's attention. So you don't want to be reciting your resume word for word, hoping that somebody picks up on something. When you develop your elevator pitch, you want to start out with the present, who you are and what defines you. This could be your current job title, your volunteer position, or even what you're studying in school. Next, you want to transition into some background information. This is where a lot of people get stuck reciting their resume. You don't need to tell this person every job that you've held or every project that you've worked on. Just a short sentence that gives a glimpse of your experience will suffice. You basically want to make them want to ask you more questions to learn about who you are. This will keep the conversation flowing instead of ending after your elevator pitch. And finally, you want to express your goals. This is usually a sentence that defines where you will see yourself in 5 to 10 years. Now, crafting an elevator pitch, it's not something that you need to overthink. It's actually really simple once you just sit down and concentrate on who you are and where you see yourself in the future. An example, this is my personal elevator pitch that I use when I go to networking events. If I approach someone or if they approach me and they ask, who I am, I always say, my name is Katie Lopez. I'm an Army wife and an advocate for military families. I'm passionate about building sustainable military communities, and I want to work for a nonprofit that serves military members and their families. So from that, it really leaves the person up to ask me more questions such as, well, what sort of issues do you advocate on? Or what type of events or functions do you go to advocate on behalf of military families? So that really lets the conversation flow into a more natural setting instead of forcing all of the information onto them at once. Now, when I first started attending networking events, I was really nervous. I had no idea what I was doing, and I would often be way too shy to actually make the most of it. So in order to hold myself accountable, I started setting networking goals for myself. So one thing I do is that at the end of every month, I will sit down with my calendar and I'll start looking at some events or meetings that are coming up the next month. So I go online and I look through the internet and other various sources that tell me about networking events, potential people to meet with, and volunteer opportunities. After I make out the monthly schedule, I set realistic, attainable goals for myself. Now, only you will know what your goals should be. They should be personalized to the event and your level of comfort. Don't expect to walk into your first networking event and leave with 50 new contacts. More than likely, you'll just be talking to people to make it to your goal without actually building those true connections. It's always quality over quantity. With that being said, though, it is important to set a minimum number of new contacts you plan to make in order to force yourself to make conversation at the event. Don't expect everyone to approach you. Sometimes you have to approach others. That's why setting these goals works, because if you're nervous or shy about it, it really forces you to get out there and start the conversation. Then you also want to make sure that you're spending time reflecting on how the event went. Did you meet your goals? And now do you feel more confident that you've actually done it? You want to make sure you keep the momentum rolling and set a new goal for your next event. It's always a nerve-wracking process to just walk up to someone and strike up a conversation with them. And it's even worse if you walk up and just lead straight into your elevator pitch. You want to make sure that you have a few conversation starters in your back pocket that you can use. And it's really important to tailor your approach based on the environment. So let's say that you're attending a conference or a networking event. One of my favorite phrases that I always go to is I always say, "This is my first time here and I feel like I've learned so much already. Have you been to this before?" Usually that will lead the person into saying, "Oh, it's my first time as well," or "Yes, I come quite often." And from there you can just keep the conversation going and then lead into who you are and do your elevator pitch that way. Also, if you're seated at a networking lunch or dinner, you can always start with casual table small talk and then work into your elevator pitch that way. The key is to just be yourself. Be confident and remember that everyone is there for the same reason as you, so they're probably just as nervous to strike up a conversation. Now, anytime that you've made a new contact, you want to make sure that you send them a follow-up email within the first 24 hours. This email is usually just a short message expressing to them that it was nice to meet them, and make sure that you refer back to anything you might have spoke about. Now is the time to follow up with any leads or contacts you may have given them if applicable. Be sure to include this information, and if you promise to do a warm introduction, let them know that you're working on that and they should expect the email shortly. After the first initial email, sometimes you'll find yourself actively engaged in a conversation with them, and other times you might not, and that's fine too. Just remember to follow up with them monthly. You can do this by forwarding them links to articles or resources that are appropriate for the connection. For example, for this, I recently met with the director of a community education program at our local community college, and they were expressing that they really wanted to tailor some of their classes to fit military spouses' needs. So after a few weeks after the initial meeting, I sent her a list of classes that the spouses in our local in-gear career chapter said they would be interested in taking for professional development. This is mutually benefiting to our relationship. The contact received information they needed to enhance their programs, thus resulting in obtaining their goal, and I was able to make sure the needs of the spouses were met. Social media can prove to be a really resourceful tool for networking online. While this process won't be as formal as meeting someone in person, it can be a great way to maintain your existing relationships as well as making new contacts. Facebook. So while all of these are on a virtual platform, you should use them in different ways to make the most out of it. Make sure that you're putting time aside each week to update and work on your social media presence. There's no point in having a profile if you're not going to be updating it. So with LinkedIn, it serves as a virtual resume that highlights your education, professional work, and accomplishments. Make sure to keep the information updated and thorough. This is what recruiters and your contacts will be using to gain more insight into who you are professionally. LinkedIn's Pulse serves as a newsfeed of what those in your network are sharing. Use this to your advantage to share articles that are relevant to your field or the field that you want to work in. It's a great way to stay current on information as well as to share useful articles with other professionals. And this all ties back into sustaining your network. This will keep those contacts, you'll stay relevant in their minds, as well as show them that you have interest in their professional work. On LinkedIn, you can also join groups that are in the area of your field and make sure that you're commenting on posts. It allows you to engage professionally virtually. With LinkedIn, I would recommend posting, commenting, sharing, or recommending someone at least 3 to 4 times a week. It really only takes a few minutes to keep yourself actively engaged. With Twitter, it's a great way to produce quick, short responses to issues. You have the chance to instantly communicate with companies, organizations, and people. While Twitter is usually a quick way to reach out to these companies, you can also use it to your advantage to tweet your thoughts. You can share links to videos, articles, and websites. Even though you aren't actually broadcasting your virtual resume like you would on LinkedIn, you're still able to ensure that your content is focused on your career field. Think of Twitter as a way to update your network quickly with short bursts of information that allows you to keep them updated on what you're doing professionally, as well as gather new information. It's generally recommended that you tweet at least 2 times a day, but these don't have to be your own thoughts. You can do this by retweeting another user's tweet just to keep your social media presence active. Now, most everyone has a Facebook profile, and we tend to think of this as more of a private social media network. But as we discussed earlier, your network consists of your friends, family, and coworkers as well. You want to make sure that what you're posting on your profile reflects who you are and is helping you build a reputable social media presence. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to stop posting pictures of your day-to-day lives, because in fact, that actually will help your contacts get a better understanding of who you are. We all want to know what type of person someone is before we vouch for them or suggest that they work with us. If every status is something negative, people will take this as a cue that you wouldn't be someone they would want to work with. On the other hand, if your post suggests positive and optimistic thoughts, you'll more likely be perceived as someone your contacts would want to work with. Employers want to hire the best person for the job. This doesn't always mean the person with the most experience. It has to be both a personal and professional balance. They want to make sure that before they bring you onto the team, that you work well with the company dynamic. And Facebook is a great place for these contacts to see how you act outside of the office. When it comes to Facebook, most of us post, like, or share daily, and that's perfectly fine. Just make sure that you're either sharing, commenting, or posting about something in your professional field at least 3 times a week. Think of your social media presence as your brand. You want to make sure that those who are in your network can see your professional commitment frequently. So I do have a few tips for you all, and one of those is that I cannot express how much it is so important to invest in networking or business cards. This is how people will get in touch with you. The cards don't have to be expensive, but just make sure that they look professional. And you may be wondering, what exactly do you put on a business card if you aren't currently working? Well, I went through that same dilemma. I am currently not employed, but I do a lot of volunteer work. So before my first event, I thought, what am I going to put on my card because I don't have an official title? So what I did is I created my business card, and it has my name, my location, my phone number, my email address, the LinkedIn profile address, and instead of a title or business, I simply wrote social responsibility and sustainable communities, because that's what my background is in, and it gives the recipient an idea of my field. It's really important to make sure that you always have business cards on hand, and I cannot stress that enough, especially if you're going to a networking or a formal event. Personally, I always keep a stack of business cards in my purse and in my car. But my husband makes fun of me for that, but I'm telling you, it has saved me. I don't know how many times I've been places where I wouldn't have expected to give out a card, but I ended up giving one out. You always should have more on hand than you think is necessary. There's nothing worse than having to tell someone that you ran out of cards or you forgot to bring them. You should just avoid this situation altogether. Your business cards, like I said before, don't have to be expensive either. Just as long as the card looks professional and has all of your contact information on it, you're good to go. And it's very likely that you will meet a lot of people at an event, especially if it's a conference or something that's over the course of a couple of days. So the last thing you want to do is just put those cards in your purse and expect yourself to remember what you talked about with each person. So at every networking event that I go to, I always spend a few minutes after each interaction jotting down a few notes about that person and what we spoke about on the back of their business card. The three key things that I've included are the event that we met at, a topic that we discussed, or a project that they're involved with, and then also included if they mentioned someone they would like to introduce me to or refer me to, or if I did the same thing, I would introduce them to someone. So just as a recap about it, networking really isn't that difficult. It's just about stepping outside of your comfort zone. Like I said about setting the goals, make sure that they're attainable. Don't walk into your first event and expect to meet 50 people. But at the same time, you will only know yourself, so you know how comfortable you are with speaking to other people. And if you're kind of shy or really nervous about it, just set a small goal of maybe meeting 2 contacts at your first event and make sure you follow up with them. Networking is really, it's all about what you make it. You will get back what you put in. So just make sure that you're sustaining those relationships by staying in touch with them and following through with what you say you're going to do for those people. So that was it for the presentation. At this time, we're going to go ahead and open it up to questions. So Vernice, if you'll just type in the box that you have a question, Vernice will unmute your mic for you and we can answer any questions that you might have. Okay, well, if there's no questions, that'll be it. You all can always feel free to email me at any time. If you think of something later on, you can always send me an email. My email address is Katie, K-A-T-I-E, .msan@gmail.com. So just feel free, if you think of something later, just shoot me an email and I'll be happy to work with you. But that is it for today. So thank you all for joining us, and this session will be recorded. So we'll have that link for you guys in case you want to go back and review anything afterwards.